September 12, 1943. Comando Supremo Headquarters, Rome. General Alessandro Rossi stared at the intelligence assessment that would haunt Italian military planning for the remainder of the war. American military mobilization: 16,112,566 personnel under arms. Italian Royal Army strength: 1,200,000 total forces across all theaters. Enemy numerical superiority: 13.4 to 1 ratio. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. His staff officers studied the document in stunned silence as Colonel Mario Benedetti, chief intelligence analyst, concluded his briefing with mathematical precision that made resistance seem impossible. Generale, American industrial capacity has created military forces exceeding our entire population of military-age males by a factor of 8. What none of these Italian commanders realized was that they were witnessing the emergence of industrial warfare on a scale that traditional military thinking couldn't comprehend. America's mobilization of 16 million soldiers represented more than numerical superiority. It was evidence of demographic and industrial transformation that would make conventional military resistance mathematically impossible and redefine the very concept of modern warfare. The Italian entry into World War II had been predicated on assumptions about warfare that belonged to an earlier era. Mussolini's military planners expected a short conflict where tactical skill, geographic advantages, and alliance coordination would prove more decisive than raw numerical strength. Operation Compass had demonstrated the fragility of these assumptions when British forces, despite being outnumbered 4-1, had systematically destroyed Italian armies in North Africa through superior logistics, equipment, and coordination. But the British Empire's military capabilities paled in comparison to the industrial mobilization America was achieving. By September 1943, American war production had reached levels that defied comprehension. Monthly tank production exceeded total Italian armor strength. Weekly aircraft deliveries surpassed Italian Air Force inventory. Daily ammunition production outweighed Italian ordnance stockpiles accumulated over decades of preparation. The mathematical realities were staggering. America had mobilized 16,112,566 military personnel from a population base that allowed continued expansion while maintaining civilian industrial production. Italy's 1,200,000 soldiers represented maximum possible mobilization that had already strained the nation's demographic and economic resources beyond sustainable limits. Colonel Francesco Romano commanded the 23rd Bersaglieri Regiment, positioned in the mountainous terrain north of Naples, where Italian forces prepared defensive positions against the inevitable American amphibious assault. At 42 years old, Romano embodied the professional Italian military tradition: staff college educated, combat experienced in Ethiopia and Albania, and mathematically trained to understand the tactical implications of industrial warfare. His regiment possessed 2,847 men, equipped with standard Italian infantry weapons, Carcano rifles, Breda machine guns, and limited artillery support from 75mm cannons that had proven adequate against colonial opponents but insufficient against modern mechanized forces. The mathematical disparities were evident in every aspect of equipment comparison. Romano's tactical philosophy had been shaped by traditional European warfare, where skillful positioning, intimate knowledge of terrain, and coordinated small unit actions could overcome numerical disadvantages. But his intelligence briefings revealed American capabilities that challenged every assumption about defensive warfare. "Gentlemen, we face enemies whose logistical capabilities exceed our comprehension," Romano addressed his battalion commanders during final defensive preparations. "American forces possess ammunition expenditure rates that surpass our total stockpiles. Their artillery support exceeds our entire divisional firepower. Most critically, their replacement capabilities mean that casualties we inflict will be replaced faster than we can inflict them." Executive Officer Major Giuseppe Torriani had served throughout the North African campaign, witnessing the systematic destruction of Italian armies by forces that possessed every material advantage. His experience provided sobering perspective on American military capability that many Italian commanders still refuse to acknowledge. Colonel, American industrial production has created military capabilities that traditional tactics cannot counter, Torriani reported during staff meetings that attempted to reconcile tactical reality with strategic necessity. Their tank production alone exceeds our total armored strength by factors we cannot calculate using conventional military mathematics. Across the Atlantic, Colonel William Patterson commanded the 36th Infantry Division preparing for Operation Avalanche, the amphibious assault on Salerno that would demonstrate American mobilization capabilities in direct confrontation with Italian defensive preparations. Patterson's 14,000 men were equipped with the most advanced American military technology: M1 Garand rifles, BAR automatic weapons, 105mm howitzers, and close air support from carrier-based aircraft. But more significantly, his division operated within logistics networks that could sustain operations indefinitely while Italian defenders faced chronic supply shortages. Men were facing Italian forces that have been worn down by 3 years of global warfare. Patterson briefed his regimental commanders aboard USS Samuel Chase en route to Salerno. Our intelligence indicates enemy strength of approximately 16,000 troops, with limited ammunition, inadequate air support, and no prospect of significant reinforcement. Our numerical and material advantages should prove decisive. American military mobilization achieved industrial and demographic feats that redefined the mathematical possibilities of modern warfare. Between December 1941 and September 1943, American society had been transformed into a military-industrial complex capable of supporting global operations on multiple continents simultaneously. The statistics defied traditional military planning assumptions. American armed forces expanded from 1,460,998 personnel in December 1941 to 16,112,566 by September 1943, an 11-fold increase achieved without disrupting civilian industrial production or causing demographic collapse. Italian mobilization had peaked at 1,200,000 personnel, representing maximum sustainable effort that strained national resources beyond recovery. American training facilities processed new recruits at rates that exceeded Italian total military strength. Camp Pendleton, California graduated 45,000 Marines quarterly. Fort Benning, Georgia produced 35,000 infantry officers annually. Dozens of similar facilities operated simultaneously across American territory, creating trained military personnel faster than any previous civilization had achieved. Industrial production statistics revealed the scope of American transformation. Monthly tank production, 1,497 vehicles. Monthly aircraft production, 7,300 units. Monthly ammunition production, 1.2 billion rounds. These figures represented continuous output that exceeded total Italian military inventory within weeks of production. Logistics Coordinator General Robert Morrison supervised supply operations that moved materials equivalent to Italian national industrial output every 3 days. His networks coordinated global shipping, rail transportation, and aerial resupply that maintained American forces across 6 time zones simultaneously. Gentlemen, we're operating logistics systems that support military forces larger than most national populations, Morrison reported to Pentagon planners coordinating global operations. Our supply requirements exceed the gross domestic product of several allied nations, yet represent less than 40% of American industrial capacity. The demographic transformation proved equally remarkable. American Selective Service had registered 49 million men for military consideration while maintaining agricultural production, industrial output, and technological research at levels that continued increasing throughout wartime mobilization. Draft boards process applications from volunteers faster than training facilities could accommodate new recruits. University ROTC programs produced officers at rates that exceeded peacetime requirements for entire military services. Women's auxiliary services provided support personnel that freed male combatants for frontline operations. Meanwhile, Italian military recruiters faced demographic constraints that made expansion impossible. Military-age males had been mobilized to maximum sustainable levels. Industrial workers could not be spared for military service without collapsing production capability. Colonial territories provided limited manpower that required extensive training and equipment that Italy could not provide.
September 9, 1943. 0330 hours. Salerno beachhead. Colonel Romano's defensive positions encountered the leading elements of American amphibious forces in the first direct confrontation between Italian defenders and the American mobilization machine. The initial engagement seemed to confirm Italian tactical expectations. American landing craft encountered prepared defensive positions that inflicted significant casualties during the vulnerable beach assault phase. Italian artillery achieved accurate fire against concentrations of American troops attempting to establish beachhead positions. All units, maintain defensive fire, Romano commanded his artillery batteries as they engaged American landing forces. Enemy casualties are significant. Defensive preparations are proving effective against amphibious assault tactics. But within 2 hours, Romano's defensive positions were confronting American capabilities that exceeded every assumption about amphibious warfare logistics and fire support. Naval gunfire from American battleships delivered artillery support that surpassed Italian divisional firepower by factors that made mathematical calculation meaningless. USS Texas alone possessed 9 14-inch guns that fired projectiles weighing 1,500 pounds each. Her broadside delivery capability exceeded total Italian artillery strength positioned across the entire Salerno defensive sector. When coordinated with additional American battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, American naval gunfire created fire support density that Italian defensive planning had never anticipated. Captain Heinrich Müller, German liaison officer, observing Italian defensive operations, transmitted the first assessment that acknowledged the scope of American material superiority. Italian defensive positions are being systematically destroyed by American naval gunfire that exceeds combined German-Italian artillery capability in this theater. Enemy fire support represents industrial capacity rather than tactical advantage. But the revelation of American numerical superiority came with the arrival of follow-up assault waves that demonstrated mobilization capabilities no European military doctrine had prepared Italian defenders to encounter. Wave after wave of American landing craft delivered troops, equipment, and supplies that seemed mathematically infinite compared to Italian defensive resources. Colonel Patterson's 36th Infantry Division represented only the spearhead of American forces allocated to Operation Avalanche. Additional divisions were arriving hourly: 45th Infantry Division, 34th Infantry Division, 3rd Infantry Division, plus armored and airborne units that would establish American numerical superiority exceeding 10-to-1 ratios within 48 hours of initial landing. Major Torriani observed American logistics operations through binoculars while coordinating Italian defensive fire. Colonello, enemy reinforcement rates exceed our casualties by impossible ratios. They are landing complete divisions while we lose individual companies. Their replacement capability makes defensive attrition mathematically futile. The American logistics demonstration proved more devastating than tactical combat. Supply ships delivered ammunition quantities that exceeded Italian national stockpiles. Medical facilities treated casualties and returned wounded personnel to combat faster than Italian forces could inflict losses. Communication networks coordinated operations with precision that Italian command structure couldn't match.
The Salerno beachhead operations revealed the true scope of American industrial mobilization through logistics capabilities that redefine the mathematical possibilities of sustained military operations. Italian defenders confronted supply systems that operated on scales beyond traditional military comprehension. American logistics networks delivered 847 tons of supplies daily to forces engaged in active combat operations. This represented more materials than Italian forces received monthly across all Mediterranean theaters. The disparity illustrated industrial capacity differences that made prolonged resistance mathematically impossible. Quartermaster Colonel James Mitchell coordinated supply operations that maintained American combat effectiveness, while Italian defensive capabilities deteriorated due to ammunition shortages, equipment failures, and medical supply constraints. "We're operating supply chains that support more personnel than most Allied armies possess," Mitchell reported to 15th Army Group headquarters. "Our daily ammunition expenditure exceeds enemy national production. Our medical evacuation capabilities process more casualties than enemy forces can inflict. Most significantly, our replacement rates exceed enemy defensive capacity by ratios that guarantee tactical success through attrition alone." American medical facilities demonstrated capabilities that Italian forces had never encountered in modern warfare. Field hospitals processed casualties and returned wounded personnel to combat within timeframes that seemed impossible to Italian medical officers observing American operations through intelligence reports. The 93rd Evacuation Hospital treated 1,247 casualties during the first week of Salerno operations while maintaining surgical capabilities that exceeded Italian divisional medical support. American medical logistics included blood plasma, antibiotics, and surgical equipment that enabled casualty recovery rates approaching 85% for wounded personnel. Italian medical capabilities operated under constraints that limited effectiveness despite professional competence. Medical supplies were rationed due to chronic shortages. Surgical facilities lacked equipment for complex procedures. Most critically, medical evacuation systems couldn't maintain continuous operations due to transportation limitations. Dr. Captain Giuseppe Marinelli, senior medical officer for Romano's regiment, documented medical disparities that revealed the broader pattern of American material superiority. "Enemy medical capabilities exceed our theoretical maximums. Their casualty treatment enables personnel recovery that our medical doctrine considers impossible. More critically, their medical logistics maintain continuous operations while our medical supplies are exhausted within days of intensive combat." September 15, 1943. American reinforcements arriving at Salerno demonstrated the mathematical scope of American mobilization in direct confrontation with Italian defensive limitations. The numerical disparities were becoming so extreme that tactical skill and defensive positioning could no longer compensate for American material and personnel advantages. Romano's regiment had been reduced to 1,847 effective personnel while facing American forces that exceeded 47,000 troops, with additional reinforcements arriving continuously. The mathematical impossibility of successful defense was becoming apparent to Italian commanders, who had initially believed that tactical expertise could overcome numerical disadvantages. American artillery support had achieved densities that exceeded Italian planning assumptions by factors that made defensive calculations meaningless. The 36th Infantry Division's organic artillery included 54 105mm howitzers, plus additional Corps and Army-level fire support that provided American forces with firepower exceeding Italian divisional strength. Colonel Patterson coordinated artillery preparations that delivered 12,000 rounds during single bombardment missions, quantities that exceeded Italian ammunition stockpiles accumulated over months of defensive preparation. The mathematical disparity in fire support eliminated Italian defensive advantages based on prepared positions and terrain familiarity. "All units, advance according to artillery schedule," Patterson transmitted to his battalion commanders as American forces began systematic elimination of Italian defensive positions. "Enemy resistance is being reduced through fire superiority that our logistics networks can maintain indefinitely. Continue operations according to planned objectives." Romano observed American tactical methods that utilized numerical and material advantages rather than tactical sophistication. Enemy forces advance using firepower density that eliminates defensive positions through systematic bombardment. Their tactics emphasize material superiority over tactical innovation, but material advantages prove sufficient for tactical success. The pattern was becoming evident to Italian defenders across the Mediterranean theater.
American forces achieved tactical objectives through resource expenditure rather than tactical brilliance, but resource expenditure on scales that made tactical resistance mathematically futile. Intelligence reports from other Italian defensive positions revealed similar patterns of American operational methods. The 45th Infantry Division's operations near Battipaglia demonstrated identical approaches: overwhelming artillery preparation, systematic position reduction, continuous reinforcement, and logistic support that maintained operational tempo indefinitely. Major Torriani compiled tactical assessments that documented the transformation of warfare through American industrial mobilization. Enemy tactical methods emphasize resource expenditure over tactical sophistication. However, resource availability enables tactical success that sophisticated tactics cannot achieve under material constraints. Our tactical expertise becomes irrelevant when enemy forces possess unlimited ammunition, continuous reinforcement, and logistics support that maintains operational effectiveness indefinitely.
Behind American tactical success lay industrial capabilities that Italian military planners had never imagined possible. The mobilization of 16 million soldiers required industrial transformation that created military supporting capacity exceeding Italian national industrial output by factors that challenged mathematical comprehension. American weapons production achieved rates that redefined manufacturing capability. Monthly rifle production, 145,000 M1 Garand rifles. Monthly machine gun production, 12,000 units. Monthly artillery production, 890 pieces. These figures represented continuous output that equipped American forces while maintaining strategic reserves that exceeded Italian total military inventory. Industrial coordinator Henry Kaiser supervised production networks that operated 24-hour schedules across multiple time zones. His facilities coordinated steel production, precision manufacturing, and assembly operations that maintained American military equipment at readiness levels Italian industry could never approach. We're operating industrial systems that produce military equipment faster than any previous civilization, Kaiser reported to War Production Board meetings coordinating American military industrial operations. Our monthly output exceeds Axis combined production while representing less than 60% of American industrial capacity. Enemy forces face industrial opposition that their planning methodology cannot address mathematically. American shipbuilding demonstrated similar capabilities that supported global logistics operations. Liberty ship production averaged one vessel every 42 days using assembly line techniques that revolutionized maritime construction. Victory ship production achieved higher speeds and payload capacities that enhanced American logistics advantages over traditional naval powers. The Kaiser shipyards launched 1,490 vessels during wartime production, creating logistics capability that maintained American forces across global distances, while Italian forces struggled to maintain supply lines within Mediterranean distances. American industrial capacity had transformed logistics from tactical consideration to strategic advantage. Aircraft production revealed the scope of American technological and industrial integration. Monthly fighter production, 1,947 units. Monthly bomber production, 1,089 units. Monthly transport aircraft production, 556 units. These figures represented continuous manufacturing that equipped American air forces while providing replacement capability that Italian air defenses could never match through attrition. Romano observed American air operations that demonstrated industrial rather than tactical superiority. Enemy aircraft appear continuously despite our defensive efforts. Their replacement rates suggest manufacturing capability that our intelligence cannot assess accurately. Most critically, their pilot training programs produce qualified personnel faster than our defensive operations can inflict casualties.
American mobilization of 16 million military personnel represented demographic transformation that challenged traditional concepts of national military capability. The scale of personnel mobilization exceeded total populations of most European nations while maintaining civilian, industrial, and agricultural production at levels that continued increasing throughout wartime operations. Selective Service Director General Louis Hershey supervised registration and classification systems that processed 49 million potential military personnel while maintaining civilian workforce adequacy for wartime industrial production. His administrative networks demonstrated organizational capability that Italian military bureaucracy could never approach. We're coordinating human resources mobilization that exceeds total access military strength while maintaining civilian productivity that supports global military operations, Hershey reported to Congress during wartime manpower assessments. American demographic capacity enables military mobilization. Industrial output reached record levels. Educational systems continued operations while contributing to military training. American society had achieved total mobilization while maintaining civilian normalcy that Italian society could never approach under wartime constraints.
October 1943. Statistical analysis of American mobilization versus Italian military capability revealed mathematical disparities so extreme that continued resistance appeared to violate logical military planning. The numbers told a story of industrial warfare that traditional military doctrine could not address through conventional tactical methods. American military personnel, 16,112,566 troops across global theaters. Italian military personnel, 1,200,000 troops across all services and theaters. The numerical ratio of 13.4 to 1 represented advantages that no tactical skill or defensive positioning could overcome through sustained operations. American industrial production supporting military operations exceeded Italian national industrial capacity by factors that challenged mathematical comprehension. Monthly American military production statistics revealed capabilities that Italian planners had never imagined possible for any national economy. Colonel Romano received intelligence assessments that documented the scope of American material superiority in mathematical terms that made continued resistance appear irrational. Enemy ammunition production exceeds our national stockpiles every 72 hours. Enemy vehicle production surpasses our total transportation capability monthly. Enemy aircraft production achieves numerical superiority over our total Air Force strength quarterly. The logistical mathematics proved equally devastating. American supply networks moved materials equivalent to Italian national industrial output every 96 hours while maintaining strategic reserves that exceeded Italian accumulated wartime stockpiles. American replacement capabilities ensured that casualties inflicted by Italian forces were replaced faster than Italian forces could inflict them. General Alessandro Rossi, reviewing comprehensive intelligence on American mobilization, provided the final assessment that acknowledged mathematical reality. Gentlemen, we face military forces that exceed our demographic capability by factors that make conventional military resistance impossible. American industrial mobilization has created numerical and material advantages that our tactical expertise cannot overcome through any known military methods. Italian military leadership confronted the unprecedented situation of facing enemies whose numerical and material advantages were so extreme that conventional warfare became mathematically impossible. The concept of tactical victory through skilled positioning, coordinated maneuver, and combat experience became meaningless when facing opponents who could absorb unlimited casualties while inflicting systematic attrition through unlimited material resources. But the true scope of American mobilization was only beginning to emerge.
as Italian forces discovered they were facing not just numerical superiority, but industrial capacity that could sustain global warfare indefinitely. The mathematical impossibility of resistance would force fundamental questions about the future of traditional military power in the age of industrial warfare. In Part 2, we'll witness how 16 million American soldiers systematically dismantled Italian defensive capabilities and redefined the very concept of military victory through demographic and industrial supremacy.
American forces attacking the Gothic Line demonstrated how 16 million soldiers translated into tactical capabilities that Italian defensive doctrine had never contemplated. The Fifth Army's advance utilized replacement rates that made Italian casualty infliction mathematically irrelevant to operational outcomes. Lieutenant General Mark Clark commanded American forces that possessed strategic depth, enabling continuous offensive operations regardless of tactical losses. His reserves exceeded Italian total military strength while representing less than 12% of available American military personnel. The mathematical advantage enabled operational methods that treated casualties as acceptable costs rather than strategic constraints. Gentlemen, we're conducting operations using force ratios that guarantee success through attrition alone, Clark briefed his corps commanders during Gothic Line planning sessions. Enemy forces cannot inflict casualties sufficient to degrade our offensive capability. Continue coordinated attacks that exploit our personnel advantages while enemy defensive strength decreases through sustained combat operations. The pattern was becoming evident across the entire Italian front. American numerical advantages enabled tactical methods that absorbed casualties while maintaining operational tempo. Italian forces achieving tactical success against individual American units discovered that tactical victories produced no strategic benefit when enemies possessed unlimited replacement capability. Colonel Patterson, now commanding operations against the Gothic Line, coordinated attacks that utilized American numerical superiority as a tactical weapon. Enemy defensive positions cannot inflict casualties sufficient to degrade our offensive capability. Continue coordinated attacks that exploit our personnel advantages while enemy defensive strength decreases through sustained combat operations. November 8, 1943. Gothic Line, Northern Italy. Colonel Romano watched through binoculars as American supply convoys stretched beyond the horizon, an endless procession of vehicles that had been arriving continuously for 6 days. His intelligence officer counted 47,000 trucks, 12,000 jeeps, 8,900 tanks, and logistics equipment that exceeded Italian national transportation capability. What Romano was witnessing represented the final phase of American mobilization reaching full operational capacity. The 16 million soldiers were no longer a statistical abstract. They were becoming a physical reality that would systematically dismantle every defensive position Italian forces could establish through sheer, overwhelming presence. December 1943 revealed the full scope of American industrial capacity, supporting 16 million soldiers through supply systems that operated on scales Italian military planning had never imagined possible. The logistics network supporting American operations consumed more resources daily than Italian forces received monthly across all theaters. American ammunition expenditure during Gothic Line operations averaged 1.2 million rounds daily. Quantities that exceeded Italian national ammunition production accumulated over 6 months of maximum industrial effort. The mathematical disparity in firepower eliminated Italian defensive advantages based on prepared positions and tactical expertise. Supply coordinator General Morrison supervised logistics operations that delivered materials equivalent to Italian gross domestic product every 84 hours, while maintaining strategic reserves that exceeded Italian accumulated wartime stockpiles by factors that challenged mathematical calculation. We're operating supply systems that support military operations larger than most national economies, Morrison reported to Pentagon logistics coordinators.
Our daily consumption exceeds enemy national production while representing normal operational requirements for American military forces. Enemy forces face industrial opposition that their planning methodology cannot address through conventional military means. American medical capabilities demonstrated similar scales that enabled casualty recovery rates approaching 90% for wounded personnel. Field hospitals processed casualties and returned personnel to combat faster than Italian forces could inflict losses, creating effective troop strength that exceeded numerical calculations based on assigned personnel. The 94th General Hospital treated 12,000 casualties during Gothic Line operations while maintaining surgical capabilities that exceeded Italian national medical capacity. American medical logistics included pharmaceutical supplies, surgical equipment, and specialized personnel that enabled casualty treatment at scales Italian medical planning had never contemplated. Dr. Major Giuseppe Marinelli observed American medical operations that revealed the broader pattern of American resource advantages. Enemy medical capabilities enable casualty recovery that maintains their effective strength despite our defensive efforts. Their medical industrial support creates personnel recovery rates that our medical doctrine considers impossible under sustained combat conditions. American vehicle maintenance demonstrated similar capabilities that maintained operational equipment at readiness levels Italian forces could never approach. Maintenance battalions repaired and returned damaged equipment to service faster than Italian forces could inflict equipment losses, creating effective equipment strength that exceeded inventory calculations.
The arrival of additional American divisions in Italy during winter 1943–44 demonstrated how mobilization of 16 million soldiers enabled strategic flexibility that Italian planning had never anticipated. American forces could reinforce Italian theater operations while simultaneously conducting global operations across multiple continents. The 92nd Infantry Division's deployment to Italy represented routine personnel assignment rather than strategic commitment for American military planning. This single division possessed firepower and logistics support that exceeded Italian Army Corps capabilities while representing 0.09% of American military strength. Divisional Commander Major General Edward Almond supervised operations that demonstrated American systematic approach to military problem-solving. We're deploying overwhelming force advantages that eliminate tactical uncertainty. Enemy resistance requires conventional military responses that our numerical and material advantages can overcome through systematic application of superior resources. American personnel rotation policies enabled continuous combat effectiveness through replacement of exhausted units with fresh personnel drawn from training facilities that graduated more soldiers monthly than Italian total military strength. Italian forces facing prolonged combat operations without relief confronted American forces that maintained combat effectiveness through unlimited personnel replacement. Training Coordinator General Hayes supervised personnel development programs that produced qualified military specialists at rates that exceeded Italian recruitment capability by factors that challenged mathematical comprehension. American training facilities operated continuously, while Italian training programs had been suspended due to personnel shortages and resource constraints. We're producing trained military personnel at rates that exceed enemy total military strength quarterly, Hayes reported to War Department manpower planners. Our training capacity enables personnel replacement that maintains combat effectiveness indefinitely, while enemy forces deteriorate through attrition and resource exhaustion. American specialist training programs created technical expertise that Italian forces could never match through peacetime preparation. Signal Corps personnel, engineering specialists, artillery technicians, and logistics coordinators possessed competency levels that Italian military education had never achieved even during extended peacetime training programs. The demographic advantages extended beyond numerical superiority. American forces included college-educated personnel, technical specialists, and professional expertise that Italian military systems could never recruit from civilian populations with limited educational infrastructure and industrial experience.
Spring 1944 witnessed American tactical innovations that utilized numerical superiority as a strategic weapon rather than simple tactical advantage. The concentration of 16 million soldiers enabled operational methods that treated battlefield losses as acceptable costs while maintaining continuous offensive pressure. American artillery coordination demonstrated capabilities that Italian defensive planning had never contemplated. Artillery concentrations included 500-plus guns delivering coordinated fire missions that exceeded Italian divisional firepower by ratios that made defensive positioning irrelevant to survival considerations. Artillery Commander General Orlando Ward coordinated fire support that delivered 45,000 rounds during single bombardment missions, quantities that exceeded Italian ammunition stockpiles while representing routine tactical support for American infantry operations. We're delivering artillery support that exceeds enemy national artillery capability during routine tactical operations, Ward reported to Corps artillery coordinators. Our fire support density eliminates enemy defensive advantages through systematic destruction of prepared positions. Enemy forces cannot survive concentrated artillery that our logistics networks can maintain indefinitely. Romano observed American artillery preparations that demonstrated industrial rather than tactical superiority. Enemy fire support represents manufacturing capability that our defensive planning could never anticipate. Their artillery concentrations achieve destruction density that makes defensive positioning meaningless. Most critically, their ammunition supplies enable continuous bombardment that our tactical doctrine never considered possible. American air support achieved similar scales that provided close air support exceeding Italian Air Force total capability. Daily sorties included 1,200-plus aircraft delivering tactical support that exceeded Italian national aviation inventory while representing routine operational support for American ground forces. Air Coordinator General Cannon supervised air operations that demonstrated American systematic integration of air power with ground operations. We're providing air support that exceeds enemy total aviation capability during routine tactical operations. Our air superiority enables ground operations without consideration of enemy air opposition. Most significantly, our aircraft replacement capability maintains air superiority indefinitely regardless of tactical losses. The combination of unlimited artillery, overwhelming air support, and continuous personnel replacement enabled American tactical methods that absorbed casualties while maintaining operational effectiveness. Italian forces discovered that inflicting casualties on American units produced no tactical benefit when replacement units assumed operations within hours. American logistics networks supporting operations in Italy demonstrated industrial capabilities that enabled sustained military operations on scales that challenged traditional military comprehension. The infrastructure supporting 16 million soldiers created supply systems that exceeded Italian national transportation capacity. Port operations at Naples processed 47,000 tons of supplies daily, while Italian national port capacity totaled 23,000 tons daily across all Mediterranean facilities. American logistics operations in single Italian ports exceeded Italian national transportation infrastructure while representing routine supply operations for American military forces. Port Commander Colonel Mitchell supervised operations that demonstrated American logistical methodology. We're processing supplies through single facilities that exceed enemy national transportation capacity. Our logistics networks enable sustained operations that enemy infrastructure cannot support, even during peacetime conditions. Most critically, our supply rates exceed enemy consumption capability by ratios that guarantee resource superiority. American road construction demonstrated similar capabilities that created transportation networks supporting sustained military operations. Engineer battalions constructed 2,400 miles of military roads, while Italian national road construction had averaged 340 miles annually during peacetime conditions. Engineering Coordinator General Pick supervised construction operations that transformed Italian transportation infrastructure. We're constructing transportation networks that exceed enemy national infrastructure development achieved over decades of peacetime construction. Our engineering capabilities enable logistics support that enemy planning methodology never anticipated. American communication networks demonstrated technological capabilities that enabled coordination of military operations across distances that Italian communication systems could never maintain. Radio networks coordinated operations involving more personnel than Italian total military strength, while maintaining communication reliability that Italian systems had never achieved. Communication Coordinator General Aiken supervised networks that enabled tactical coordination on scales that Italian military doctrine had never contemplated. We're coordinating military operations involving more personnel than enemy total population while maintaining communication reliability that enables continuous operational effectiveness. Enemy forces cannot achieve similar coordination using their available communication infrastructure.
Giugno 1944. La liberazione di Roma rivelò la psychological impact of American numerical superiority on Italian military morale and civilian populations. The reality of facing 16 million soldiers had created psychological effects that transcended tactical considerations. Italian forces defending approaches to Rome encountered American operations that demonstrated the practical implications of unlimited military resources. American units suffering tactical defeats were immediately replaced by fresh units drawn from personnel reserves that seemed mathematically infinite compared to Italian replacement capabilities. Romano's regiment, now reduced to 847 effective personnel, faced American forces that exceeded 67,000 troops with additional reserves that outnumbered Italian total military strength. The psychological impact of facing mathematically impossible odds had begun affecting Italian military effectiveness beyond tactical considerations. Men, we face enemies whose numerical advantages make conventional military resistance impossible. Romano addressed his remaining officers during final defensive preparations. Our tactical expertise cannot overcome enemy resource advantages that enable unlimited personnel replacement, continuous artillery support, and logistics capabilities that maintain operational effectiveness indefinitely. Italian civilian populations observed American operations that demonstrated capabilities beyond their comprehension. American supply convoys, military formations, and logistics operations revealed industrial and demographic advantages that made American victory appear inevitable regardless of Italian defensive efforts. Civilian observer Dr. Mario Benedetti documented Italian civilian reactions to American military demonstrations. Population morale has collapsed upon observing enemy capabilities that exceed our national resources by ratios that make resistance appear futile. American military operations reveal industrial capacity that our civilian population never imagined possible for any national economy. American psychological warfare operations utilized numerical superiority to create demoralization effects that exceeded traditional propaganda effectiveness. Leaflet drops, radio broadcasts, and civilian demonstrations revealed American capabilities that made Italian resistance appear mathematically impossible. Psychological Operations Coordinator Colonel Williams supervised operations that utilized American resource advantages for psychological impact. We're conducting psychological operations using resource displays that exceed enemy national capability. Our numerical and material advantages create psychological effects that traditional propaganda methods never achieved.
September 1944. Statistical analysis of American operations in Italy revealed the complete transformation of warfare through demographic and industrial mobilization. The deployment of portions of America's 16 million soldiers had systematically dismantled Italian defensive capabilities through resource advantages that traditional military doctrine could not counter. American casualties in Italian operations totaled 312,000 personnel killed, wounded, or missing. These losses represented 1.9% of American military strength, while Italian forces had been reduced to fewer than 340,000 effective personnel across all theaters. The mathematical disparity revealed the decisive nature of demographic advantages in modern warfare. American replacement operations had maintained combat effectiveness while Italian forces deteriorated through attrition that could not be replaced due to demographic and resource limitations. The casualty exchange ratio favored American forces through replacement capabilities rather than tactical superiority. General Romano provided final assessment of American operations that acknowledged the transformation of warfare. Enemy forces achieved victory through resource advantages that traditional military methods cannot counter. Their numerical and material superiority enabled sustained operations that consumed Italian defensive capability through systematic attrition. American industrial production supporting Italian operations had exceeded Italian national industrial capacity by factors that revealed the scope of American mobilization. Monthly American military production allocated to Italian theater exceeded Italian annual industrial output while representing routine supply operations for American military planning. Industrial Statistics Coordinator General Wilson compiled production figures that demonstrated American capability. Military production supporting Italian operations exceeds enemy national industrial capacity while representing less than 15% of American wartime production. Enemy forces face industrial opposition that their national resources cannot match through any sustainable military methodology. The broader strategic implications extended beyond Italian theater operations. American military strength of 16 million soldiers enabled simultaneous operations across global theaters while maintaining strategic reserves that exceeded most national military capabilities. Italian resistance had consumed minimal American resources while exhausting Italian national capacity. The Italian campaign revealed fundamental changes in military science through American demonstration of demographic warfare. The mobilization of 16 million soldiers had created military capabilities that transcended traditional concepts of tactical skill, strategic positioning, and military professionalism. Mathematical analysis revealed that American victory had resulted from resource advantages rather than tactical superiority. Italian forces possessed professional competence, tactical expertise, and defensive advantages that proved irrelevant when facing opponents who could absorb unlimited casualties while maintaining operational effectiveness through continuous replacement. Military analyst Dr. Edward Shills compiled statistical assessments that documented the transformation of warfare. American operations demonstrate that modern warfare belongs to nations capable of achieving demographic and industrial mobilization exceeding traditional military calculations. Enemy tactical expertise becomes irrelevant when opponents possess unlimited replacement capability and resource advantages. The implications for future military planning transcended Italian operations. American mobilization had demonstrated that demographic capacity, industrial capability, and resource availability had become more decisive than traditional military virtues like tactical skill, combat experience, and strategic expertise. International military observers documented American capabilities that redefined military possibility. British, Soviet, and neutral military analysts acknowledged that American mobilization had created military standards that traditional military powers could not approach through conventional means. British military observer General Brooke provided assessment that acknowledged American achievement. American mobilization represents unprecedented demographic and industrial coordination that creates military capabilities exceeding traditional military comprehension. Their systematic approach to military resource application has fundamentally altered the mathematics of modern warfare.
The American mobilization of 16 million soldiers represented more than military achievement. It demonstrated the transformation of warfare from tactical contests to industrial competitions, where demographic and resource advantages determined strategic outcomes regardless of traditional military factors. Italian resistance had represented the final challenge to American demographic mobilization in European theater operations. The systematic defeat of 1.2 million Italian soldiers by portions of America's 16 million troops established precedents for military planning that would influence strategic thinking throughout the remainder of the 20th century. The human cost of demographic warfare revealed the mathematical nature of modern military conflict. Italian casualties approached 850,000 personnel, while American losses totaled 426,000 across Italian operations. The casualty ratios reflected replacement capabilities rather than tactical effectiveness, demonstrating how demographic advantages had become decisive factors in military outcomes. American military methodology had proven that numerical superiority, when supported by adequate industrial capacity, could overcome any traditional military advantage through systematic resource application. The concept of tactical excellence had been subordinated to industrial capability and demographic mobilization. Professor Samuel Huntington's post-war analysis concluded that American operations had fundamentally altered military science. The Italian campaign demonstrated that modern warfare belongs to nations capable of achieving total demographic mobilization supported by industrial capacity exceeding traditional military requirements. Military victory through resource superiority had become more decisive than victory through tactical excellence. The strategic lessons influenced military planning for decades. NATO planning, Soviet military doctrine, and Chinese strategic thinking all incorporated American demonstration that demographic mobilization could create military advantages that traditional military systems could not counter through conventional means. In the mountains of northern Italy, memorial sites commemorate the 850,000 Italian soldiers who discovered that professional military competence could not overcome demographic disadvantages of 13.4 to 1 numerical ratios. Their sacrifice revealed the transformation of warfare from tactical contests to industrial competitions, where victory belonged to nations capable of mobilizing entire populations for military objectives. The mathematics were decisive and irreversible. Italy had fielded 1.2 million soldiers against America's 16 million troops. The difference represented more than numerical superiority. It demonstrated the emergence of demographic warfare, where population resources and industrial capacity had become more decisive than military tradition, tactical expertise, or strategic innovation. American victory in Italy established the template for modern warfare. Overwhelming resource application supported by demographic mobilization that could absorb casualties while maintaining operational effectiveness through industrial capacity that exceeded enemy national resources. The age of demographic warfare had begun, and traditional military powers would never recover the strategic advantages they had possessed before American mobilization demonstrated the decisive nature of total national commitment to military objectives.